Good evening, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. Welcome back. Today we have Chapter 8, Clarifying Agency Relationships. Tomorrow and Friday, we'll actually be doing 2 chapters for each day. They're a bit smaller chapters, so we'll be able to fit them in the time. But to make sure we get everything done, we're going to be doing two chapters tomorrow and then 2 chapters on Friday, and then we'll be done. And then we'll move on to Principles 1, I believe. Yep. All right, so our outline for the evening, we're going to go over disclosure policy, the 4 Ds of disclosure: decide, disclose, document, and do as you say. We're going to go over understanding and developing a company policy, the rules and laws required, written policy and procedures documentation, policy and procedures manual, and creating a policies and procedures manual. So not a huge outline for this evening. But like I said, we're doing 2 chapters tomorrow and 2 Friday. So disclosure policies, the 4 Ds of disclosure: decide, disclose, document, and do as you say. And we're going to go into detail on each one of these. And the first one up is decide. So deciding what type of service you want to provide. So in real estate, you can do a lot of different things with your license. You don't have to just work with buyers. You can choose to work with buyers, with sellers, commercial property, property management. There's all sorts of things that you can do in the real estate field, so you don't have to be constricted to one. However, there are some brokerages, like I said before, that just do buyers. They won't even work with sellers or anything like that. So if you're under their brokerage and you get a listing, you just can't get the listing. They won't do it. And there's brokerages that focus on just property management and just on sellers, and some as well on commercial. So you have to just be aware of what you're going into when you choose a brokerage, because some of them will limit you to some. Here at Nova's Realty Group, he just kind of lets us do whatever we want to do. If you decide you want to do buyers or sellers, then they'll support you with that. And there are other brokers like that, but some of them will just focus on one particular thing. So buyers and sellers, commercial is a bit different. I don't know much about commercial. I'm not competent in that field, but I could take classes and become competent in that. And with my real estate license, it would allow me to work in commercial if I chose to do that. So you can choose all kinds of different things. So you need to decide what type of service you want to provide. Me personally, I'm doing buyers and sellers. I haven't done commercial or property management. But I prefer the buyers, honestly, because it gets you out there showing properties, learning the inventory of the area. Whereas if you have a seller, you basically just put it up and then you got to worry about marketing, and you're waiting for calls to come in. So if you have a listing, you're going to be answering a lot of calls. So you can choose, like I said, you can choose what you want. There's all kinds of different things you can do. Intermediary. So if you're working with buyers and sellers, we've talked about intermediary. If your broker is working with sellers and you're working with buyers, you just got to be careful how you proceed with that, because you could become an intermediary. There's also sub-agency. So if I'm showing properties outside of my firm's listings, there's also exclusive buyer or seller agent, a non-exclusive single agent, which is an agent for either the seller or the buyer, but not in the same transaction. And then there's a non-agent. A non-agent would be like a property manager, or if someone just wanted to get me for consulting. So when you get a license, you're going to want to decide what you want to do, and then know the advantages and disadvantages of each. So yeah, property managers actually don't need a license, I believe.
Yeah.
They're one of the few that are exempt. So I mean, you could do property management or a consultant or something like that if without a license. But if you have a license, it's not going to hurt. It's not going to hurt.
Yeah.
Wait, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So if you don't need a license for property manager, then how can you prove to them that you're property manager for
That you're competent in
Yeah.
property management?
Yeah.
You technically, you don't have to. Although
You never have to prove you're competent. Just like I got a commercial person call me the other day and asked if I could find a commercial listing. I said yes because I can. Like I told them, yes, it'd be my first one, but yeah, I can absolutely do that because I have all the tools to do the searches and everything. It's just a matter of it's not something I've done before. But I don't have to necessarily be competent in order to do it. It's just something that I'm considered competent because I took the test as far as selling properties and stuff like that. But I don't have to necessarily prove I'm competent to a certain individual before I can sell their home. Or they might want to see that I'm competent. If they ask for it, like, well, what have you done before? And I can list off things, then that gives me a better chance of getting it. But
if you have a background in it,
yeah, it's not necessarily like if somebody contacts me and is like, hey, can you help me find a house? And I say yes, and they go, okay, well, I'm looking in this section of, Texas that I'm not, let's say I'm out in Curtin or something where it is I haven't sold a house before. I don't know the market there. And they're like, well, have you done it out here before? I can be like, no, but I can still do it. Like, it's not saying I can't do it. I can still do it.
I still technically do it, yeah.
Yeah, it's just a matter of if they don't want me to because they don't think I'm competent enough, they can get rid of me. It's just a matter of I don't have
So
to.
then, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So how would you know what houses are in the market? Would you have to enter into their MLS?
So a lot of the times with property management, it's usually apartment complexes and stuff like that. A lot of the times they won't even put their
stuff on the
apartments on the MLS. They'll just go to their property manager and say, "Hey, property manager, find us some tenants." Basically.
Yeah, but as for selling, yes. Like if I had a client that contacted me and said, "Hey, I'd like to sell my house in Pearland. Can you help me out?" Yes, I can. I would just have to have access to HAR.
Yeah.
Or they're looking to buy a house in Pearland, let's say. If I have access to HAR, I can actually help them search that area. It's just a matter of whether I have that access or not. And like if I was an agent, I know a lot of the bigger companies here in town, like if I go to like Remax, let's say, and I work there, they like set me up with a BCS MLS, and like I'm agent number whatever in the Bryan College Station market, and if somebody wants something outside of that, I can't do it. You have to go find somebody else. But with Justin, like I actually personally got access to HAR, but I know Justin has access to HAR and Austin, and ABOR, and all sorts of different things. And so if my aunt wants to buy a house in Austin, I can technically do it through Justin because Justin's the one that's technically in the sale. So if Justin wants to do a search or two, or if he wants to let me, while he's there, do a search or whatever, I'm allowed to do that as long as if I have access to that MLS in some way, I technically can do the searches for it. Just matter. That's what it comes down to.
And I actually, before I got into real estate, I actually looked at property management. I thought I was going to do it for a little while, and that is one of the duties that they ask you to do is find tenants for their stuff. So you're not just managing the whole property and everything that needs to be done there. You're actually actively trying to find.
I know it's different for me because I'm actually doing it I'm technically the property manager for all of my dad's rental properties he had. He had like 2 mobile home parks that had, I think like together they had like 30 trailers, and then probably 4 or 5 like houses or duplexes that he owned. That now I'm in charge of doing like the property management stuff for that. And so it's nice for me because he didn't have access to all that stuff, so I do. So if I can put that stuff, if somebody moves out, I can put that stuff on HAR or whatever to be like, hey, if you're looking for someone to rent, here's another place, just so other agents have access to it a bit easier. But
So,
you don't necessarily need it.
so like, the property managers kind of like has some can do some of the agent things that get you worried, like
To a point.
yeah, but like
Yeah.
not necessarily all the way.
Yeah.
So
And like if he was to get a lease signed by somebody,
Mhm.
he had to go through somebody else to get the promulgated form. He could fill it out himself, but like, as we always say, it's just better to have an agent fill it out because then, yeah, you know things have to be done right. Well, now for all these properties, we're sitting out in the lease forms. I can just fill them out because I'm an agent. I use those forms all the time, so I kind of know what I'm doing all that sort of stuff.
So if I did want to do property management, a license would probably give me a much better chance.
A license definitely helps. That's something my mom's been saying since I started this. It's like it's so much nicer having somebody who's licensed to be able to do it because it makes the process a little easier.
You have access to tools that normal civilians are not. They don't have access to.
Or they're just not aware of.
Well, yeah, they don't even know of it.
Some of my dad's leases were from like 2002 that he just never re-signed because like they're still there and like I think it just goes by after a while like it's fine and I'm like well you know you can just Google search the Texas like it's in the like that same website
you can
like
just pull it out.
you can just pull it up on the same website I was like all the contracts were on like it's not a big deal but he just didn't know that was a thing so he just never thought to do that.
So yeah, there's a lot of different things you can do. Just you're going to want to decide what you want to do, or you can dabble in all sorts of things. You can be try and be a jack of all trades. The choice is yours. All right, and the information about brokerage services form, the IABS. So I'm probably sick of hearing about this form by now, but we are going over it again. So enjoy. Aiden, sorry, not Aiden. Wyatt, is this an important form? Is this form important?
I figure it's important.
You figure right, it is important. So, the information about broker service forms we've talked about before. It basically just says who I work for, who's the next in charge. If I want to have, if a client wants to give a complaint, they know to go to my broker.
Yeah.
So it's for all consumers at the first substantive dialogue. Now, substantive dialogue, it's if the first time that I actually go and sit down and talk with them, or if I just have a long conversation, really just depends on what you say. So if someone's just asking me, like if someone calls me and they're asking them how or what's this property listed at, do I need an IABS form for that? No, I don't, because he's just asking me, it's just basic information. I can just tell him, hey, yeah, this is how much it's worth. But if he starts asking, will they take $10,000 less than what it's listed at, something like that, then I would need to be getting an IABS form. But you're not going to want to put the form in their face first time you see them and be like, hey, I need you to sign this form. You're going to scare them away super quick. They're like, I'm not signing that. I'm not signing anything for you. So, yeah, so if I'm going to a showing with a new client, I would actually show them the property and do all of that. And then at the end, right before we leave, I would say, hey, if you do want me to represent you, here's this form. It just tells you basically who I work for and who you can complain to. That's when I would actually give it to her. I wouldn't be like, hi, my name's Stefan, sign this form.
Yeah.
So it's like if you're interested, hit me.
Well, yeah.
I mean, and also
you have to give it regardless.
Well, yeah.
But you don't even have to give it. Like I was talking to Justin about this because in my head, like I don't carry them around with me all the time. So what happens if I get called out to a showing and I'm just in the car? Like, I guess I'll go out there, but like I don't have the stuff with me or whatever. You're allowed to be like, I can answer that question, but I will be sending you something as soon as I get back to the office. And like that's because you don't want to be like, ooh, I can't talk about that until we leave. Like that just seems weird. But you can say like, okay, I can answer your question, but I'm gonna have to send you something when I get back, and you'll just have to initially send it back. No big deal. But and usually people are fine with that because you're not trying to be like, ooh, hold on, I'll be right back, and then have to like go to the office and pick one up. So that's what I usually do is if it comes up in that situation, I usually just be like, I'll send it to you later because I'll probably send it the same time I send the buyer's rep or whatever I'm sending them anyway. I'll send it all together.
Yeah, if you're doing like a listing contract, you wouldn't do it beforehand. You would send it with the listing contract.
Yeah.
Just have them sign it when they're signing everything else. So yeah, just pick. You have to give that form, but just pick when you give it.
Yeah.
right? Just don't shove it in their face the first time you see them. You're gonna scare them off real quick. And so it basically informs consumers of the choices regarding the broker's role. So it's going to outline the broker's role, and it's going to outline what you can expect from the broker as well. So like I said, we've gone over it multiple times. You need the form. It's very important, but it could at some point scare somebody off.
Yeah.
Justin said it's happened to him. Say, I'm not signing that form.
Sorry.
So it does happen, but you
At
still
that point,
need, at least give it to them.
Yeah.
If they won't sign it, at least hand it to them.
Yeah.
And maybe even document that you handed it to them.
And if they don't want to
Snap
sign
a
it,
picture,
if they don't want to sign it, it's going to be a pain in the butt to get them to sign a contract.
Yeah, if they don't
So
want to
it's like-
sign it, that would be something you would want them to put in writing, like even on the back of the IABS forms. You can just have them write, I blank refuse to sign this form.
Yeah.
Then
Or
we're,
does I refuse to sign it? As long as they write it.
as long as they write it and sign or initial or something.
But then, couldn't you, they're still gonna just sign the whole I won't sign it.
No, you don't have to initial that way. You can just.
Oh,
if
I
they
was
just
gonna say,
write-
I was like,
No,
Yeah.
on the back of it, they can just write, I refuse to sign this.
Yeah, I
these guys.
Because in a court, you can be like, it's in their handwriting, that
Gotcha.
covers it, but
I mean, if they sign the back, they're not technically signing the agreement.
I don't
It's
know,
not.
but it's still one of those like.
So if they put on the contract, I refuse to sign, and it's in their handwriting, then that's valid, right?
for an IABS, yes.
For in IABS, you're
Yeah.
covered in that
But you
situation.
can't do that like for a listing contract. You can't have them just put like, I refuse to sign this form. And that, if you refuse to sign a listing contract, I don't work with you anyway, so.
Yeah, if you're not gonna sign an IABS when I'm getting a listing contract with you.
Yeah. That's why I send it all together, is because they're already gonna have to sign stuff. So if they're going through individually picking out forms they don't wanna sign, like,
Yeah.
I'll sign this contract and this form, but I'm not gonna sign this one. I don't know what they're thinking, but yeah, if you try to send it to an individual and they don't wanna sign it, in my head, if you don't wanna sign that, you're not gonna wanna sign the buyer's
You're not
rep,
gonna wanna
or
sign anything.
you're not gonna wanna sign an off, like, if I send an offer, you're probably not gonna wanna sign it. You get it, it's just, it's gonna be a pain in the butt, so this is like.
I haven't had a client refuse to sign yet, but sometimes you'll send them something and it'll take them a couple days to send it back.
Yeah, they'll call you and go, what is this, and whatever.
Yeah, and so you gotta keep on track, or keep your client on track, saying, hey, did you sign this yet? I need this. If we wanna proceed, I need this. So, if they choose not to sign, yeah, either get them to put that in writing, or trying to explain to them the differences. If they were to sign it, what they would do.
If they're not signing, then they just don't trust you, and then that's already toxic from the beginning.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
That's how I feel too, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. If they don't sign it, I don't want to work with you anyway. Like if we're at a showing and I say, hey, I need you to sign this form because Trent requires that I have all my clients sign this. It shows you who my broker is and kind of outlines the duties that I'm going to perform for you. And they go, I don't want to sign that. I don't know why. So
Yeah, why would you?
goodbye.
People are just hesitant to sign things sometimes.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a very formal document, like the IABS. Next, we have a sample of it. This is the older version. We actually have the newer version. We'll pull up real quick. This is the one from the 1950s or something, back when Justin was practicing.
Back in the day.
Back in the day. So this is the actual, the one that we use, and probably a lot of other brokers as well. This is the Trek IABS form. And as you can see, if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see we have the broker. We've gone over this before, but
Yeah.
we have the license, broker license number, all that. But then we have down here, this is where they actually initial. So that's where your client will initial. They don't actually sign the paper; they initial it, which technically is still a form of signing.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just need an initial from them on that. All right, let's go back to slides. Yeah, that's a much older one. So there are some exceptions to the brokerage services form, the IABS form. So if you're having a lease and the lease term is less than 1 year, so anything greater than a year, you would need the IABS form. But if we're doing a 6 months lease or even a 9 months lease or something strange like that, we wouldn't technically need it. I would probably still include it anyways.
Yeah, I just think.
And if no substantive discussions were given, if we were just saying, if someone calls me and we just say basic information back and forth, hey, how much is this worth? It's worth this. Okay. How long has it been listed? Stuff like that. If you're just answering basic questions like that, if we don't have any substantive dialogue, it's just back and forth, basic question answer. So in that situation, you wouldn't necessarily need a IABS form. Open houses. Now I don't really agree with this one because if you're doing an open house, I would probably give it to everyone who walked in the door. It's best practice to give them because if you're showing an open house and it's your own listing, then yeah, you would need to disclose almost immediately when they come in, hey, my name is Stephen Grossman. I work with Nobles Realty Group and I represent this person. Have a look around, enjoy any snacks we have, stuff like that. So yeah, you would definitely want to make it very clear to all parties that who I represent. So I would, if I was doing an open house, I would still include IABS forms. Personally, I think Justin agrees with that. I'd have to ask him, but
If nothing else, I'm available. Have a stack of them on the desk or like something
Yeah.
where they can at least look at them. You don't necessarily have everybody sign them and return them to you or whatever. But
yeah, just give it to them.
just have them out. Yeah.
Or even if you don't give it to them, at least just disclose who you are,
Yeah.
who you work for, who you're representing. Will help cover your butt. So if the parties are already under a contract, you might not need a broker search form. So if we already have a buyer rep or a listing agreement, then we technically wouldn't need one. I'd probably give it to him anyways. Like I said, Justin tells me all the time, cover or CYA.
Yeah.
If you want a nicer version, how about CYB? Which means what, Wyatt?
CYB.
CYB. Cover your butt. So yeah, I know that we in this office we document everything, and I mean everything. If I get an email from an agent, they're asking me to carbon copy them so that they can put it into the file.
I got the CYB a minute later.
You just now got CYB?
Yeah, dude, I was like, I'm trying to be like, damn, when did that happen?
Cover your butt.
Yeah.
Dang man, was it a long day?
Dude.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so cover your butt. Like I said, we document everything in this office. Other offices might not do that. Some probably do, but yeah, even emails. I copy Nobles Realty Group, and they put it into the file. And sometimes, yeah, you'll get some interesting emails. Even not the non-interesting ones. They're just normal. Hey, got this. Send this form to you. I try to copy them on it, just so we have it under record to cover our butts, like I was saying. Because you don't want Shrek coming in to your office looking for documents that you don't have. And so if the party's represented by another licensee, you also would not technically need an IABS form. So there is some exceptions to the rule. Some of them, I would still do it. I would still give them the form, but there are exceptions according to Trek.
And for meets parties represented by another licensee, you don't have to send them to I don't have, if I'm representing Wyatt who's buying a property, I don't have to send them to the seller. They don't need to know, because they don't deal with me. They deal with their agent deals with me. And we've already had discussions, so they can look up who I work with or whatever. I did a transaction with a lady who when she sent back her her contract after we sent her an offer, She sent it back and attached the IABS and like every form imaginable to it in this one long PDF and had us initial every page. And she sent back like, well, your clients didn't initial the IABS form, and I was like, they don't need to. Like, I can have them do it if it's like, yeah, if you care that much, like, I guess I can have them do it, but like, they don't need to. Like, that's not, it's not required by anything. But
They really don't.
yeah. But all it does is, again, you don't want your clients talking to the other agent, and you don't want that cross communication going. And that form is going to have it's going to have the other agent's phone number and their email address and everything. So now my clients are calling them because they see their number on there, and it's like, you don't want that happening. So it's best just to not get it out to the other agent at all.
Maybe that other agent wanted
Yeah,
to cross the crossfires.
I don't know.
They can, they can dispute who was the procuring cause. So yeah, there are a few exceptions to the rule. So disclosure of agency status. That's, when I send you disclose your agency, you disclose who you actually represent. You'll need to disclose agency status to another party in the transaction, pretty much to all parties in the transaction. You'll need to disclose it to another licensee that's representing another party. So even the other agent representing the buyer, if you're representing the seller, you would still need to disclose your agency status. And it may be oral or in writing, but like I've always been saying, it's best to get it in writing. If you get it in writing, you can always have proof and cover yourself.
But that doesn't mean that like at an open house, you can't just make an announcement that you represent the seller. You don't have to necessarily have everybody sign a form that says you represent the seller. So that just makes it easier, but you still do have to disclose it in some way.
Yeah, as long as you tell them who I am, who I represent, and you're good. But yeah, best practice, put it in writing. So disclose, we're still on disclose, timing. So disclosure of agency status should be done at the first contact. Sometimes agents will, when they go and they'll show a house, they'll show up to the house, they'll show a house, they'll open the door, and they say, all right, here you go. And then just step back and we'll stand on their phone, do stuff like that. And that is, he's not doing his job, he's not doing the agency, he's not actually showing the house. He's just kind of there, So when you disclose agency status, it should be, you're of course going to want to do it. If you go and show a property, you don't necessarily have to say it right at the beginning. But you do need to disclose within the first contact, so within the first substantial dialogue, like I was saying. So disclose to another party in the transaction, to another licensee representing another party. To another licensee representing another party. So are you actually representing this person, basically? So the consumer has to make a decision. Do they want to be a client or do they want to be a customer? And I think next slide actually shows kind of the difference in a way that we haven't seen with check marks and everything. But the client has to make that decision whether or not they want to be a client or a customer. Most of the time, they're probably going to choose client because they get way more services. But the IABS form will help them with that decision. And the broker can use visual aids. So you can promote listings, or you can create maybe a listing presentation, or maybe even a cartoon. Justin was actually showing me this morning a way for me, like it's a system that I could create cartoons with. A little short drawn animation cartoon, maybe explaining a point or explaining who I am, something like that. You could use, it's just another tool for us to use. So you can use visual aids like that, and people do make a YouTube video. I'm still working on my listing presentation, but Justin started having us do that. It's just something that you present to your client to show them why they should be a client and not a customer. So you can use visual aids to help you with that. And there's a comparison of the consumer services, which is coming up in the next slide. So this is great. I love this. People love to see check marks like this. What are they normally going to say? I want the one with the more check marks. I want the more coverage. So when they see, you can show them this form. And it's not even really a form. It's just kind of a representation of what they're going to get if they were to be a client instead of a customer. So like I said, you have accounting, disclosure, fairness, and honesty. Those are just for customer. And then when you go to client, we have, I'm acting under your instruction. So you're my boss, basically. Confidentiality, full disclosure. I'll help you negotiate. I'll give you opinions and advice and price counseling. So you can show them this and say, hey, if you actually do sign this fire rep or you do this listing contract, this is what you're going to get versus what you would get if you didn't sign it. So if they're refusing to sign, maybe even just having this form might help a little bit. People like, I don't know why, but people like to see it laid out in front of them with check marks like that. A lot of advertising companies or a lot of companies do that in their advertisements. More checks equals more stuff, right? So that could help you with that. All right, so penalty for failure to disclose agency status. So this goes back to what I was saying. If I just go and I show a property and I just open the door and I just let them do your thing, I never actually told them agency status, which could come back on me. And then who are they going after next? My broker. And he's not going to be happy. If his license gets shut down, we all get shut down, and then all my other co-agents probably hate my guts at that point, right? Because you're going to be mad at me, man,
Oh, yeah.
if I get everything shut down? Just because I walked up and I was like, hey, here's the house, go look at it.
Also, just another quick thing. That's a dumb thing to do, not only because you're not disclosing anything, but you don't know who your clients are, even if you know them. You think you know them well, you don't know what they're going to do. If you go into an occupied house where the people have left because like they'll be gone for the hour while you're doing a showing and you just wait outside, everything that was in the house when they went in might not be there when they come back out. And so if the seller comes back or the agent comes back and sees that there's stuff that's missing that was there before, they're going to look up who was there and see that it was you, and you're going to be the one who gets in trouble for it, not your clients. So that's why that's why you want to follow them around. You can, open the door and let them kind of walk and kind of follow behind them and kind of let them lead you around, but you don't want to just especially that's why it's good to always take two people, is because if you have a couple, suddenly the guy wants to go look in the garage and the woman wants to go look, at whatever in the bedroom or the closets or whatever. Well, now they split up on opposite sides of the house and you can't watch both of them at the same time.
Yep.
And so it's just best to, that's why
You can do two, or you can just tell them, hey, we need to stay together.
Yeah, either way.
But you can't let them out of your sight when you're showing an occupied home like
Yeah.
that. Because, even if you know them well and you know they're not going to steal anything, the people that are selling the house don't know
Yeah.
that they're not going to steal anything. So, so if I just open the door and let them in and just say, hey, go around, that could end up being, I didn't disclose agency and I can get suspended. And then, like I said, because we are sub-agents of Justin, he's responsible for any of our actions.
Yeah.
So if they're coming after me to suspend my license, they may come after him as well. So it may be written or oral. The IABS Form will disclose it as well, but it could be written or oral. The only problem is, like I've been saying, you can't prove oral. You can't prove that you said something. If you're doing oral unless you're recording the conversation. So yeah, best to get it in writing. You also need to include disclosure of non-agency. So if I'm just purchasing or selling a house for myself, I got my eyes dilated today, bro. That's so bright.
Making it dark.
So-
it's going right through. I'm just like burning up over here.
So if I'm purchasing or selling a house for myself, I would have to disclose, hey, I'm an agent. But why do you think that is? Why do you think I would have to tell other people that I'm actually a real estate agent?
I mean,
If I'm selling my own house,
oh, so that, I mean, that's probably gotta be like some legal things, so it's like,
yeah,
that's how I would think about
Yeah.
it.
there's some legal things, yeah.
Well, and that's what we should do.
Well, it's close. So, me as a real estate agent, I have tools. Like I said, I have tools that a normal person wouldn't have. So it gives me an advantage over everyone else, pretty much. I know the field. I have these tools. It gives me an advantage. So, yeah, if you're buying or selling for yourself, there is actually a whole spot for you to put in the form.
Yeah, in paragraph 8.
Oh, it's in paragraph 8. Look at him. He knows the paragraphs. Yeah, but you do have to disclose it because, like I said, I have an inside track. I know the business, so
Yeah.
I could be seen as having an unfair advantage.
Also, it helps the other people know that, for example, if I'm an agent for Stefan, if Stefan wants to put something in the contract, I can advise him, like, hey, that's probably not ethical. I can't exactly put that in there. I can, I can't put that in special provisions because it changes this, but we can do this and this or whatever. But if I'm my own agent, I can just put it in there and maybe they won't catch it. And I don't have that second layer of accountability of somebody else trying to stop me, basically.
Yeah.
And so it helps the other people also know that if I have to disclose that I'm an agent, it's also good for their agent to know, okay, we need to look at this maybe a little more carefully just to make sure that I'm not trying to squeeze it. As a buyer's agent, I want the seller to pay for everything, but there are certain things in a contract that I just know the buyer's going to pay for, so I'll mark buyer when I go down. If I'm my own agent, I'm putting everything to them because I don't want to pay nothing. And I'm gonna, you really are gonna try to work it as much in your favor as you can, more so than even usual. And so it just helps, again, cover them so they know to look out for that stuff.
Right. Yeah, so you're going to want to disclose agency the first substantial dialogue. Honestly, the more houses you show one client, the more you don't want to deal with that client, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, y'all know I've shown that guy 50 plus houses, and every day it was the same thing. So it's like, oh gosh, I gotta go show him another house. Here you go. Go ahead and look. I'm here to show it. Yeah, so you start getting up in 20, 30 houses, you're pretty much done at that point. All right, so disclose, there could be ambiguous situations. So any property tours, there could be, during a property tour, that's when a lot of different people can come in and look at the property. So that's when you would want to disclose agency as well. So was there a substantive discussion or any open houses like we talked about just a little while ago? Intermediary. So if the broker has multiple agents under him, he needs to be aware, he needs to have a clear policies and procedures as to the intermediary status, and we do here. Because you could run into intermediary quite often if you have a bunch of agents under you. Just trying to keep it small here. A lot of other brokers, they don't even really do selling houses. They just go into recruiting and then they charge you monthly fees. So they say, I'm just going to go focus on recruiting, like maybe Keller Williams or someone like that. They have 500 plus agents under them. Just be aware what you're getting into. But yeah, the office would need a clear, definite policies and procedures for intermediary. So disclose if intermediary status is arising. If you think it will arise, just disclose it. and use written disclosure if you're making appointments. Everything in writing. All right, document. So any copies of disclosures, any written documentation is preferred. They need to prove representation or prove non-representation. Document everything. It's like I was saying earlier, cover your butt. Trek doesn't care about your excuses. When Trek calls, I know Justin's perking up, and I'm just like, Justin, what'd you do now? What'd you do now, Justin? You do something? Trek's calling, because they're going to call and they want something. If Trek calls and they want something, you give it to them.
Yeah.
You don't give it to them. They're going to do what's called a site. What's it called? Well, yeah, they'll audit you. Yeah, they'll actually do a site. I forget the word. They'll come on site. They'll come to your firm and investigate you. So that's, it hasn't happened to us yet, but that's one of the reasons why Justin always prefers everything documented, and that's why we even keep our emails and everything like that to cover us, to keep us from trick. All right, do as you say. I wish more agents did this, honestly. I've had it happen plenty of times. If I have an offer out to you and you're selling, and you say you're going to call me before you accept any offers to give me a chance to change our offer, and then a day later you just text me saying, hey, we accepted another offer. You didn't do what you said you were going to do. You didn't call me. And this happens quite a bit. If you say you're going to do something, just do it. Just do it. I mean, we lost out on that deal because she didn't call me when she said she was going to. Stuff like that, it happens. And I'm actually trying to get some showings on a couple properties right now. I called 3 times. The other agent will not answer me. And when they do answer, they say, oh, yeah, I'll call you back here shortly. Never call me back. And that's happened multiple times. So if you say you're going to call me back, for goodness sake, you know? So just do what you say. If you say you're going to do something, just do it. Conduct the transaction within your established roles. And your actions must not contradict your actual contractual obligations. Say that 3 times fast.
No.
Actual contractual. So yeah, you have to do actions that are in your realm or in your established role, But yeah, if you say you're going to do something, just do it. It really makes life a whole lot simpler. All right, now understanding and developing company policy. So track rule 535.2 I, 1. The broker is required to maintain written policies and procedures. Justin says all the time, you think I just wrote these policies and procedures because I like making your life harder? It's like, no, I'm doing it for Trek. It's not me, it's Trek asking for this. That's why I'm doing it. So if brokerage has to have a policies and procedures handbook, and they're going to be different for different brokerages, obviously. They're going to have their own services that they provide and so on. So it's going to show the scope of the salesperson's authorized activities and competency to conduct them. Remember we talked about competency. I may be competent in Bryan College Station, but am I competent in Dallas? No, not really. I don't live there. I don't know the area. Honestly, earnest money is different too. If you're trying to buy a house in Austin, Texas, I think 6 or something percent, I believe, is what their normal is for earnest money. So here, down here in Bryan College Station, you can expect yeah, $1,000, $2,000 in earnest money. You go up to Austin, you're gonna pay 13, 15,000 or more in earnest money. So it's different for different areas. That's why competency is you're competent in your area. You might not know the way they do it in even just a different city. Just a city is, a little while over. There goes Justin. Yeah, it took off. So yeah, it's gonna show the scope of the salesperson's activities and competency to actually do them. It's going to show the requirements for license maintenance. It's also going to show notices of any changes, or it's going to show proper maintenance of license. It's going to show notice of any changes to TRELA, TREC rules, or any promulgated forms. So if the form changes, they just changed the 1 to 4 slightly. So they have to give you notice of when something like that happens. And then continuing education, it's got to line that out. When you get your license, you're good for 2 years. Then when you're getting close to the 2-year mark, you have to renew your license. And I don't know if y'all were told this, but yeah, the first time you renew your license, you actually have to take 90 hours SAE courses. So there's certain SAE courses that you can take, but you have to take 90 hours of it. And I actually just had to do mine recently. I'm coming up on my 2 years, so I did 90 hours. But after your first time of renewing, you only have to do 18 hours after that each time. It's just the first time you have to renew the first 2 years. Yeah, you're gonna have to take some courses.
So you were teaching, working, and
I was teaching, working, and doing the courses.
Yep.
Yeah, gotta do it, man. But yeah, you'll have to line up continuing education. I'm actually talking to Justin too. If we can get continuing ed in these classes, I think there's a whole market for it, in this area.
Because right now it's actually kind of difficult to get continuing ed because they're all online and people not having them in person. So it'd be nice if we could have somebody from the title company, whatever, come in and do one here in this classroom.
Maybe not even the title.
Well, yeah, just wherever, yeah.
Just having it in person, yeah. Because I took mine online.
Continuing education, is it more just like in-depth on stuff, or?
Well, there's different topics. There's stuff like property management, brokerage, stuff like that. I actually took the brokerage course, so that was interesting. But yeah, you have to take 90 hours for your first renew on your license. It's also going to outline any advertising rules. There's certain things that you can and cannot put into your advertisements, and they may be different for each brokerage. Some brokerages may require you to put, the equal housing opportunity, stuff like that. I think you actually have to put equal credit opportunity into your advertisements. I believe you do.
We're supposed to.
Do what?
We're supposed to put that on there.
Yeah, you're supposed to put it on there, but there are advertising rules, and there's probably going to be different for each brokerage. And it's also going to have maintenance of records. So all the records, like I said, cover your butt, keep records. And remember, we said this before, broker is responsible for any conduct of the sponsored licensees. This is a big reason why written instruction is so important, because if they have been writing, you can prove it. Just like I kept saying, if I don't do my part, if I don't pay my dues or something, Justin actually had one time, one of our agents wasn't paying their dues, and the MLS office called Justin and said, hey, he needs to pay his dues. If he doesn't, we're shutting off all of your MLSs, not just Bryan College Station.
Yeah.
So Justin had to make a choice in that situation, and he ended up having to terminate. Justin, being the nice guy, was trying to save it, saying, no, well, what if I just find the money and pay it for him? But, of course, Miss Linda's like, no, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
He didn't pay his dues. Cut him off.
Let him go.
So him just not paying his dues on the MLS almost shut all of Justin's MLSs off. So you can see our actions have an effect on everyone, especially the brokerage in general. All right, so phases of developing a policy. This is more if you're going into brokerages, if you're going to be a broker. You're going to want to review agency choices, review any advantages or disadvantages of each. Like I said, some brokers are only dealing with buyers, some with sellers, property management, etc. And there's certain advantages and disadvantages of each. Consider market, sales staff experience, specialization, and financial expectations. You're also going to want to write a company policy that's outlining the agency in general and the services that y'all provide. There's a figure that's showing that, an example of that in your book. And you're also going to want to train and monitor effectiveness. So these are 5 phases if you wanted to develop your own office policy, if you someday wanted to be a broker. Here's actually a little example of what it would look like. This is a company policies and procedures manual just regarding agency. You can see we have basic agency philosophy, handling common situations, certain situations that are pretty common to happen. Dealing with outside companies, if you're dealing with companies outside of your brokerage, which you likely will be. And any guidelines for the use of agency forms, why, when, how, and the benefits of using it, and then, common agency questions that they'll have answered in there as well. So that's just a little example of what it'd be like. All right, so we're in key points already. Like I said, tomorrow we're doing 2 chapters. Friday we're doing 2 chapters, and then we'll wrap it up. We'll be done. So we're almost done with this course, guys. Almost there. So our key points for this evening. A brokerage firm, they choose their role. They choose what they want to do. Here, like I said, Justin just lets you kind of choose what you want. Some brokerages might not do that. They might make you specialize in one area. So just be aware of that when you're going in. Full disclosure to all parties. We've been talking about that multiple times. It is very important. Thoroughly document everything. That's the CYB, cover your butt. Good licensees follow up. That is one that a lot of people don't do. You follow up with your clients. Sometimes, like we said, they've ghosted before.
Yeah.
If you send them some properties and then they don't hear from them for a couple of days, maybe you just send them a text or call them and be like, hey, haven't heard from you in a few days. How you doing? Or is there anything I can help with? Stuff like that. So following up is really good. Gives you a good rapport too. A firm should develop clear written company policy on agency, regarding agency, and how to handle common problems that happen in real estate and with agency. Excuse me. Suggestions for brokers. Develop a brochure outlining your firm's agency options and use simple, clear statements when doing so. All right, we have a few discussion questions. How are we doing, guys? Excellent. Looks like you're gonna get out a little bit early. Hi, Vera. How you doing? Good.
I'm good.
Do you want to do the first one?
Sure.
All right, go for it. Why is decision on agency relationship necessary for each transaction?
Hmm. I feel like this one's very simple, but for some reason it's so simple that I just can't think of the answer.
Yeah, I've been there before. So if we need to make a decision on agency relationship, right? So why is it necessary for each transaction? Because each transaction is going to be different. No transaction is going to be the same. So you would need to make a decision on what you're going to do or how you're going to represent.
Okay.
Because it would help you outline your duties and what you're supposed to do and what they're supposed to do. Because if you
Okay.
don't, also remember, if you don't make agency clear, you can lose your license.
Yeah.
So do that quickly. So very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see, when is the best time to discuss agency with the seller? Come on, that's all you know. When's the best time for me to discuss agency with the seller?
When's the best time to discuss agency with the seller? After signing the contract.
It would, yeah, it'd technically be during signing the contract. So if I'm doing with the seller, we're gonna do a listing. It would be first contact.
Yeah.
First contact, I would give them that form. Or when they sign the listing agreement, I would include it with that form. So yes, good. What about with the buyer? Before, yeah. It could be like the first time I actually even talk to him. If I see him, or if I go and show him a property, I'd give it to him after, like I was saying. I'd show him the whole property and be like, hey, got this form for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, mostly just the first substantive dialogue. So this one isn't really much of a question. It's just kind of, I guess it's just something to discuss. How useful is the golden rule? Who is my client and what services must I perform? And who is my customer and what services can I perform? That goes back to that. Goes back to this right here. So what forms can, what services can I perform and what I must perform? Very useful in deciding your agency and what you're actually going to be doing. Okay, question 4. When would it be important to disclose that you are not someone's agent? I'll do you what? This one's all you, Matt.
When is it important to disclose that you're an agent?
If I'm not someone's agent.
When? Usually just like.
Can I answer this one?
Yeah, you phone a friend. Say what?
Oh, did you pick somebody?
I did, but you
Hey,
can come in and save them.
Hey, it's a team right here.
Oh, it's a team effort. You're right.
Yes.
Okay.
So go
I'm
for it.
gonna say when you're discussing agencies, so before at first contact, like you said earlier.
Yep, exactly right. Sometimes they would think, like I said, you could think that I'm this person's agent, but I might not actually be that person's agent. So I just need to make it clear to the other agent or to the other parties, yeah, I'm not the agent. I'm just here at the moment. I'm not actually representing anyone. Very good. Thank you, Ms. Vita.
You'll also get that, just to let you know too, you'll see that in open houses because there are times that, for example, if Stefan lists a house, I might call up Stefan as another agent and say, hey, do you mind if I do an open house at your listing? Because to him, awesome, you're going to bring a bunch of buyers into my house. Perfect. And for me, awesome, I'm going to bring a bunch of people who are looking to buy a house that I'm currently sitting in. They get to look around, and then I get to be like, do y'all want to put in an offer right after? It works for both parties. But that is a situation where like people might come in assuming that I'm the seller's agent and not talk to me and not realize that like, no, if you want to do something, like I'm right here, like I can actually help you. And so that's another situation where you'll see you have to disclose that you're not somebody's agent. Yeah.
Because even just you being there, they could think you're the agent.
Yeah.
Honestly. If you're there dressed nice, no.
Yeah.
I'm clearly not the customer. I wouldn't be dressed like this. Or would I be? It really just depends.
Maybe for someone older,
Yeah,
you know.
could be. Or I'm dealing with a millionaire client who rocks tuxedo every day.
Yeah.
Be nice.
His choice.
I'd like to live that life. All right, last question. How extensive should the disclosure of agency be? You want to do this one again, Carl? We have a limited.
How extensive should disclosure of agency?
Yeah, how extensive should disclosure of agency be?
Very extensive.
Correct. Very extensive indeed.
Correct.
That was the hardest question ever, correct? Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah. So you're in disclosure agency. It's gonna be very detailed, so they know exactly what you're gonna be doing and what they're gonna be doing. So very good.
I like that.
Yep. All right. So like I said, we're doing 2 chapters Thursday and then 2 chapters Friday. So we got out a little bit early today, but we'll push through. We're almost done. And then y'all be moving on. You only have 2 more courses after this, and then y'all are completely done. The entire program. So we're getting there, guys. But y'all have a good night, and we'll see y'all tomorrow, okay? Bye.